Welcome to my podcast. Here you're gonna listen to inspirational stories, interviews, guests, and learn all about the English language. This is your place. Welcome again. I hope you like the content. Comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Well, my name is Rodrigo. I was born on a Thursday, April 26th, 1978. I was supposed to be born around May 10th or May 12th, but on the afternoon of April 25th, my mother started feeling unwell and not feeling the baby inside of her very much, the movements, and she decided to go to her obstetrician. And then the obstetrician told her everything was fine, that she was a little bit overwhelmed and impressed with everything, and that she could be back home, and if she didn't feel well at night or the next morning, she could come back to the hospital. And so she did. My mother was really worried because there was plenty of time for me to be born yet. And at that time, in the town that I live in Brazil, which is a very small town in the state of São Paulo, there wasn't any kind of sonograms, any kind of ultrasound that could be attesting my health condition before any kind of natural birth or a C-section. During the morning on April 26th, she wasn't feeling me anymore, moving or kicking or anything else. And then she decided to go to the hospital. But the doctor who took care of me, I'm not going to say names or whatever, you know who you are, wasn't in town. And then she went to the hospital. And back in the late 70s, there was any idea of cell phones. So there was no only landline phones where you could have any kind of connection with the doctor. But the day went on and the doctor only arrived around 4:30 p.m. on that same day, and he did some previous examination and told my mom that baby should be born immediately because I was already suffering from hypoxia or something like that. Actually, I am proud of telling this story because I'm a survivor. And then she went to the operating room, and the doctor needed to perform a C-section. Natural birth wouldn't work for me and did all the procedures that were supposed to be done, but they didn't do the proper testing, and my mother really literally passed out on the table with so much pain because the anesthetic wasn't working, and they kept going, desperate to save my life. And then they finished up, they took me out, but suddenly they could tell that I had the umbilical cord around my neck. They suddenly took it off very, very rapidly, and then they could tell that I didn't cry. And then I started to cry, but for 10 seconds later, I was completely purple. And there's where the story really begins. There's where my fate begins. Because there was a lack of oxygen in my brain. This lack of oxygen is called hypoxia. You can Google that later and see what hypoxia means. I wasn't completely fine. I had to go to the intensive care unit, and my father and the rest of the family who was there at the hospital got the news that I wasn't fine. They didn't know if I would survive or if I wouldn't survive, and you know. Then the situation went on. The doctor had discharged my mother um, from the hospital the next day, but he told my mom that I would have to be in the intensive care unit yet because I wasn't well. So I needed to. I was born with 1 kilogram and 200 grams. And then my mom said, "No, I'm not going to go home without my baby. I'm going to stay here and I want to see the baby right now." At the intensive care unit, nobody thought I would survive after 6 days in the hospital. Um, the doctor discharged me and my mom to go home. So they tried to find a pediatrician who could take care of me, and this pediatrician was literally a saint. You know, he knows who he is, and he came up to my parents and told, "Okay, there's one ground rule for this child to survive. He can't go out of the room for a month or so, and if he gets visitation, there has to be a person to check everybody else and ask everybody not to smoke because he's very fragile, and I need to check on him every 3 times a day for a long time up until I can say that he's free or he's going to survive." And then at that time, my mother's mother, who is not here with us anymore, the unsung hero of this story, helped my parents, my father and my mother, to take care of me. My grandmother for me is the saint on earth, you know. So she was very caring, very loving. I miss her so much. Her name was Martha, and she, as a very dear cousin of mine, told me once, she was she used to lick my wounds when I was hurt, and that's what she literally did. I could survive after a lot of course, I'm talking to you right now, so I could survive. When I was 9 months old, I started saying my first words in Portuguese. My grandmother, Martha, was always trying to make me be verbal by singing with me, by telling me stories, and then the first signs of us that something was wrong started to appear. I was 6 months old, nothing. I didn't crawl. I had to be helped by someone. And they knew that something was wrong, and everybody said, "No, it's totally normal. Children start walking at 9 months old, 1 year old. Let's wait." And then my mother said, "No, something's wrong with my child. We need to see what's going on." And my father used to work at a bank. We could find the doctor, a neurologist. So they found near my town. My mom was alone with my grandmother. This doctor told my mom, "Hey, forget about this child. This child is not going to walk. This child is not going to talk. This child is going to be confined to a bed his whole life. So forget about him." I know that, and he gave medicine to dilate my brain. We went home. My mom cried the whole ride back home through, and my father was waiting. He could tell that my mother was crying the whole ride through, and he wanted to know what was going on. She said, "No, I don't." It's something that he told me that Rodrigo is not going to be a normal person. He's going to be in bed his whole life. And my father didn't accept. Said, "No, I'm not going to give this medication to my child And they found another doctor in Sao Paulo, another neurologist. And then he told my parents, I want to meet the doctor who prescribed this medicine to this child. Because he said, of course, your son has a motor coordination problem, but his brain is perfect. He's going to speak, he's going to walk, he's going to study, he's going to whatever, you know. The one thing that he told my parents was he's not going to be the first one, but also he's not going to be the last one. He's going to have a normal life with limitations and shortcomings, but he's going to survive. So what he needs is something called physical therapy. Really needed an orthopedist to take care of me as well, and he took care of me. He took good care of me, and at 1 year and a half, I had my first appointment with this doctor. He was a very strict man. He was very, very, very strict. He really traumatized at some points of my life because he wanted from me things that I really couldn't do. So then when I got discharged 12 years later, he told me why he did those things. I did what was supposed to be done, and at 4 years old was the very first time when my mother and my father could see me walk. And then my whole journey began. It's not a trip, it's a journey. Because my treatment was something very, very serious. I went to physical therapy 3 times a week. I would go to school every day. And then, as I told the Brand's interview, American English with this guy, and then I had to go to school. That was another journey. Because I didn't need to go to a different school because my brain works perfectly. What is my difference to you guys? I write slower than you guys do. If you take a test like in 50 minutes, I need 2 hours to take the same test. And also, what is lack of oxygen in my brain? Because that's why it's called hypoxia. So I have 2 lower limbs which are impaired, and 1 upper limb which is very impaired, which is my left arm. You can see it because I'm not walking, but if you see me walking, you easily can tell that I have some kind of problem. And I have half of the balance of a, let's say, able-bodied person. So it's really hard. So I had to go to physical therapy to strengthen my muscles. So if you ask me today what my first memories are, is that I would go to physical therapy 2 times a week, and I had very lovely parents around me. My parents were always together, taking care of me, and with my grandmother together. I miss you so much, Granny. I hope you are in a very good place right now, because without you, I couldn't come any further than I am now. So all this treatment was very painful because it was exhausting. I don't want anybody feeling bad about me, about telling this story. I want you to understand that I have survived, so and then I went to school. I went to a public school. All my studying in Brazil was public schooling, and some teachers didn't understand. They thought that I was trying to be high maintenance and not doing the things into proper time. But then I had my mother who would go to the school to tell the principals and the teachers that I really had um, difficulties to write and to everything else. Um, so it was a long journey, and I all you can all the places that you can imagine that a child goes, and it is normal to them. It wasn't normal for me, and it was really important to me to experience the same thing they would experience. And one day, my father came into my room and told me I was sad about something, about some kind of any kind of setback that I don't remember right now to tell you guys. And he said, "Why all you have the why all you have the brains, I'll have the legs." And when I learned that phrase coming from my father's mouth, he would I never forget that. And then I went to school. It was not easy because I was with at that time they would call normal children, and I was like abnormal at that time. And then there was a lot of bad things that happened to me in school. I was called names. I was called that I was a freak in terms of appearance, because some children are really mean, you know. And I would come to them and say, "Okay, I might have a physical condition that impairs me to do something, but I don't have this kind of cruelty that you guys have. So be careful with the words that you tell me because um, they hurt." I was very understandable at the time. I'd say so, not to say the least, but it would hurt. Uh, I didn't know it would become wounds, and that I bring them, of course, healed ones up to this day. But I remember these stories very vividly that it's not worth telling you guys on video, you know. So life went on. I went to school. I finished primary school, elementary school. I didn't miss a year. And by 12 years old, I went to my doctor, to my orthopedist. Um, and he told my father that I would need two surgeries, um, two correctional surgeries in both feet. And then he told me that I started to cry because I was so afraid to go under surgeries, and I would never go uh, under that surgery. Of course, I would end up doing the surgery because my parents were responsible for me at that time, and they knew what I needed. And I went. I had these two surgeries, one in each year. It was 1990 and 1991. So I was 12 and 13. I am my oldest child's age right now at that time. And then I went through that surgery, and it was 1 year without walking again for each leg because I did my left foot first, and then the next year I did my right foot. But it was a very traumatic period because my father helped me through my recovery, and it was because I needed to walk, and there was a lot of pain when you do bone surgery because my foot, both of them, were reconstructed, and it was really painful at the time. You know, every bone surgery is painful. You can imagine you crushing or having your your feet remodeled. And then I went through. I survived again. I was homeschooled for 2 years almost, but I stayed home homeschooling for 6 months, and then I decided to go back to school after I was in a wheelchair because my recovery was through first wheelchair and then a walker, and then I walked, and then I went back to school, and then I finished high school, and then I graduated. I was almost 18 years old. I finished my English course in 1995, December 1995. And then the principal, who's somebody I love very dearly, and she invited me to teach her at her school. I said, no, I think I'm not able to be an English teacher. I love English, but I think I'm not able to be an English teacher. And she told me, yes, you are. Um, I said, I need some orientation then. I need some guidance. And she said, the only guidance I'm gonna give you, she was very cheerful and playful. It's a kick in your behind, close the door, and leave you with the students. She was the person who gave me the opportunity to do what I do today, to make myself known. The rest is history. I am married. I'm happily married to Talita. That I always say I have two wonderful children that you already know. I love Madonna, as you already know. From Brent's interview, who's another amazing guy. Brent and Bob, the Canadian, are two people that I take off my hat to them because these guys are awesome. You are great. And for all of you who are watching me, um, thank you very much. I hope you have liked the video, and see you next time.